This is a very special live stream. Um, Lately, I've been a victim of Canada my whole life. I have a crazy liberal mother. When I was a boy, my mother tried to put a dress on me. My mother abused me for many years. And, when it's your mother, it's not like someone like, a stranger where you could just leave. When it's your mother doing it to you, because you still love your mother, even though she's crazy. And if anyone tries to say, oh, well, how do we know it's you or your mother? Well, she did the same kind of stuff to my father. So before I was born, but even before I was born, my mother had called the cops on my father when it was just my father, my mother, and my older brother before I was born, right? So before I was born, my mother, my father, my brother, my older brother, they lived together at a different house. Apparently, according to my mother and my father, my mother used to call the cops on my father. My mother said my father was cheap. My mother said my father was a schizophrenic and liar. And my mother even said that my father used to hit her. And she told me this when I was a kid, like when I was 5, 6 years old. And my mother like took me away from my father and wouldn't even let my father see us. Like rarely until sometimes that my father would see us, but it would be very rarely. And I started to realize as I was growing up that every time I interact with my father, he's not the way that my mother described him to be. He's not crazy. He's not screaming. He's not nuts. He's not going to try to put a dress on me. My father was a normal person. And the courts, of course, the courts usually side with the mother. And if anyone who was abusive, it was anyone who was abusive, it was my mother. When I was a kid, a boy, she wanted to put a dress on me. She like hit me several times. She screamed at me. And the touching started when I was a teenager, early teenager, like 11, 12, 13. She started to touch me inappropriately, my mother. She would like pinch my butt and like touch my nipples and touch my pee. And it was like the most bizarre situation. Like when it's your own mother doing it to you. How do you know? And there were times when I tried telling people like of the abusive side of this woman. And, she's such a liar. My mother's a sociopath. But my father, like I said, before I was even born, my mother had these same issues with my father. And my father knew she was crazy. And they would fight. So before I'm even in the picture, my mother's calling the cops on my father, saying that he hit her, saying this and that. And my father remarried because he's not crazy. And my mother never remarried because she's a fucking bitch. And she's a nightmare and she's a nut job. She's a liar. So I'm going to start from the top. I'm going to detail major things she's did to me, which is so inappropriate, which any other person, if it wasn't your own mother doing it, you would leave, right? And I tried leaving a few times, actually. My mother had me tracked me down. So let's start from the top. Of course, the very top is before I was even born. My mother and father used to fight constantly. And my brother, who's a karate teacher named Jason, is 400 pounds. And the reason I used to be very thin and the reason I gained weight is so my mother would stop touching me. And then when I gained weight, my mother said, oh, you used to look like such a model. Oh, you used to look like a model. Why don't you get thin again? No, I'm not going to get thin, Mom, because you're going to touch me if I get thin again. You're going to touch my peen. You're going to touch my butt, pinch my butt, and touch my nipples, and tickle me in places like really inappropriately, and try to put a dress on me. So no, I'm not going to lose weight. So what happened was when I was a kid, and like I said before I was even born, my mother and father used to fight. My mother called the cops on him, and she said that he hit her, but I actually believe that she hit him. And my father definitely has a different side of the story. And I've seen it. I believe my father's side of the story because everything that my father said about her is true. Everything she said about him is not true. My father's not cheap. My father's not abusive. My father never screamed at me. My father never hit me. My father's not crazy. He's not schizophrenic. My mother's crazy. But she's a sociopath crazy. She's not like You know what I mean? Like there's two different kinds of crazy. There's like sociopath crazy where, they go out in public like a Stepford wife and they make it look like they're perfect, like, and then behind closed doors, my mother's abusive, bully. She's a sociopath. So, starting from the top, when I was a kid, my mother was fighting constantly with people. I started noticing my uncles, my aunts. My mother fought at her workplace. My mother was always having stories about people she was fighting with, which should have been a red flag for me to figure out. Okay, my mother's was is the villain in this case. But because it's your mother, you champion for your mother, even though you start to realize she's the wrong one. And my brother, like I said, he's a karate teacher. How do you explain a karate teacher who's 400 pounds? So I have two theories. Either my mother used to like beat him or touch him, or like, how do you explain he's a karate teacher? He's supposed to be teaching martial arts. How do you explain a 400-pound karate teacher? So I gained weight, and I don't know if this is the same reason, but my brother's warped. Like my brother, he's full on sociopath like my mother. Like they're both bad. Like they're both full sociopaths. And I don't know if it's because she abused my brother or if it's because he just was always like that, but they're both sociopaths. So anyways, explain to me how you have a 400-pound karate teacher. But the reason I gained weight, I actually was very thin. I was always thin. I always used to eat salad and everything like that. And then I even at one point was really popular in school, 11, 12, 13. Suddenly I got very popular and I was very thin. And that's when my mother started touching me, touching my butt, pinching my butt, touching my nipples, telling me how I look like a model and I look like a supermodel, and and then she used to creepily come and touch me and come to me in appropriate places. She walked in my bedroom. I was in the bathroom. She walked into me in the bathroom on purpose. My mother's creepy. Like my mother's weird. My mother's like one of those liberal nut jobs. And then when sure enough, I realized that my mother's crazy when I was about 9 or 10, because my mother like came around and was like, "Oh, why don't you like wear this?" And she showed me a dress. I'm like, "No, mom, I'm a boy. I'm not going to wear a dress. Like, are you insane?" And she kept trying to like, thank God she didn't scream at me over it, but she screamed at me over other things, like crazy things that like is out of my control. Like her getting in a fight with her coworker would set her off and put her in a bad mood, and she'd come home and I'm 10 years old and she's screaming at me. And keep in mind, like, we were poor. We didn't have food. I was always hungry. I was always a hungry kid. I used to go to school hungry, and I couldn't concentrate because I was hungry. So, we were poor when I was a kid. But my mother did get a better job when we were older, and then and when I was a teenager, we didn't. I still had like maybe some food, but my mother like there was no home cooked meals. There was no nothing. You know, There was nothing like that. It was just, if anything, my mother would, sometimes she would buy mac and cheese or cookies and put them in the fridge, and that's it. Like that was like what I ate growing up in a teenager. So there was no home cooked meal, nothing like that. And there was not even barely that. And I used to always go to school hungry. So I was happily thin, and I was popular because I was thin, right? And then my mother began touching me inappropriately, and my mother, you know, so the abuse continued, and I started to realize like all of Canada is like the same. All of Canada, because I tried reporting this to Canadian authorities, and they were abusive too, and they're creeps. These liberal nut jobs who walk around and they're transgender, and they wear dresses and stuff like that. Like they're all crazy Canada. They're all like that. It's not so hard to just escape these people. I tried going to the States. My mother had me tracked down. My mother like put a false warrant for me, and they had me tracked down. I was attacked in the States, and eventually I was brought back to Canada because the police in the States are corrupt too. Like they're corrupt. I mean, if you're rich and you're born rich and you live in a rich neighborhood, the police don't touch you. But if you are like me and you're like middle class, not even at practically poor, and you're like a renter, and you have to live in the ghetto neighborhood. I could only afford to live in a ghetto, and then sure enough, there were problems. People robbed me, like hit me, stole my money, So it's not like the world's perfect anyways. It's not like I can just, call the right people and the next thing you know, my mother, is in prison, my brother's in prison because my brother, he's a karate teacher and like he works with kids and I don't know, what? I'm not going to go there for right now. What I'm going to go with my mother and say there's a lot of things that she did that were really abusive to me. And people usually believe women, they believe the mother, this whole Me Too movement. You know what? It's men who are often the victims. And if anything, I love my mother because I stayed this in spite of all the evil stuff she's done to me. That's how much I loved, like, I loved my mother. Anyone else. But I did actually, like, I couldn't handle it several times and I left. I did leave. And then she had warrants put out for me and she, like, pretended like as if I was, crazy. She called me crazy. That's not true. That's not true. It's not true. She also called my father crazy, and my father divorced her. My father remarried, and my father has a job, and my father is a normal person. So explain that one. So anyone who tries to say, "Oh, maybe you are crazy," well, she also called my father crazy, and my father divorced her. My father remarried. My father has a job, and my father is a normal person. And my father has never been in any issue with the police ever since he divorced her. So explain that one. So the same thing that my mother did to my father before I was even born is then she started doing to me. In fact, she began touching me as well. And one time when she was touching me, she even called me my father's name, my mother. I've been fighting these Canadian weirdos for years, these transvestite parades. I just want to be a normal guy, okay? I just want to go to school, play soccer and football. And I didn't wear no girly clothes. I don't want to dress feminine. I don't want to wear no pink or nothing. I just want to dress like a normal guy. Not be fucking with around these creeps and these transvestite weirdos and transvestite Canadian school teachers. They're just as bad. All my life. And then as she dictated everything, she chose which high school I went to. She made me go to a Catholic high school. She made me choose which college program. She made me go to a certain college program I didn't even like. Everything. She got me fired from jobs. This woman is crazy. And then we had two dogs. Okay. And one of the dogs, my mother, like a psychopath, she brought the dog to be euthanized. My mother got jealous of a dog, a Pomeranian, and she went to a veterinary clinic and she found the most sketchy, crazy veterinary clinic run by Indians and Chinese and a creepy French Canadian and a native peoples. My mother found the most sketchy, worst veterinary clinic in all of Canada because my mother wanted to get the dog euthanized because my mother was jealous of a dog because my mother's a nut job, a psychopath. And when the vet clinic called me to because I'm the actual owner, was the owner of the dog, and they said about, oh, they're going to euthanize the dog. I said no. I said absolutely not. There's nothing wrong with the dog, and even if there was anything wrong with the dog, I still wouldn't euthanize the dog. And there wasn't anything wrong with the dog. Literally, my mother brought the dog in and wanted to have the dog euthanized because my mother was jealous of a dog. And I So my mother's a nut job. My mother's a nut job, and I said no, obviously, to them euthanizing my dog, and uh, they end up going because the guy's a psychopath, a French Canadian. He was one of those psychopaths one of those veterinary doctors that gets off on euthanizing animals. He loved euthanizing animals, and after he murdered my dog, he had the biggest smile on his face. This veterinarian psychopath who euthanizes animals. And the Humane Society, that's what they do. They euthanize innocent dogs and cats, healthy innocent dogs and cats. They euthanize them. That's murder. Euthanization is murder. And I would never consent to that. So then there was another incident as well. There were several incidents when I tried dating women. I tried dating in high school. I tried dating high school girls. My mother would sabotage me. My mother would, there were girl would come over to the house and we were about to go on a date. Then my mother would come and start saying embarrassing stuff about me, like extremely embarrassing. Um, oh, like, oh, did you know he picks his nose? Why would a mother say that to a girl that I might be dating, a high school girl, when I was in high school, and a girl comes over and my mother says to her, "Oh, did you know that he picks his nose?" And then other things my mother used to say to sabotage me on purpose. And when I was in high school, this whole oh, it's okay to be gay thing wasn't, no, it wasn't around. No, it was not. It was not. Everyone was closeted, everyone. And we were all, especially the most closeted guys, especially were trying to date women to prove that we were straight. So, yes, I am bi, and I was still, of course, as a normal guy, just trying to be a normal guy. I just, didn't think about men. I just really just was like, okay, this is the normal thing to do. I date women. And I tried dating women too, and my mother would sabotage me with women. And then I had enough. Eventually, I'm like, okay, I'm just like, in my 20s. I'm gonna date men because women are nuts and they're crazy, especially my mother. And then my mother sabotaged me there too, and called me, all like the homophobic slurs. She called me all the names. My mother embarrassed me. My mother. So my mother was abused me all my life, and like so like I tried contacting all of the I didn't want to do it this way. I tried contacting all of these news agencies. I contacted Fox News, I contacted MSNBC, I contacted uh, even the Canadian news places, which Canada's far gone. Canada's nuts. The Canada has transvestite parades. Canada has transvestite school teachers and transgender parades. Canada's gone. So I tried already them like years ago, and I realized like Canada, they're nut jobs. But I've even contacted American places like Fox News and all of these big news agencies, ABC News, and I even tried some of the smaller news places, and they don't care. They don't care. They don't care. Nobody cares. So I tried going about this through a journalist, through the media. I tried, and they don't care. Especially they just want money. They don't care. They don't care about people. They just do stories that are, you know, so especially because I'm Canadian, and then the famous thing they always to tell me is, "Oh, call someone in Canada." I'm like, what? Who do you think I'm trying to escape from? Call someone in Canada. The Canada has transvestite parades with transvestite school teachers. They're all creeps. They're creeps in Canada, and you're telling me, "Oh, just call a Canadian news source." What do you think? Like, who do you think I'm complaining about? I'm gonna just call Canadian news source. The Canadian news agencies, they're all nut jobs. Okay, so. I tried calling American news agencies. I tried going through it, but and so, I tried this for years, and so now I just like desperation, just on live stream, just telling people the truth, in case anything, and you know, I I left many times. I did. I tried leaving her, and then also, it's your mother, right? So you put up with a lot because it's your mother. So this is I when I was growing up, I had like this attitude, like I can solve any problem, any mathematical problem, any science problem. I got like, at one point before the abuse, I was a really good student actually. And even after the abuse, I still was like, then I became just an average student because obviously it wasn't easy for me, like I didn't have tutors. I was always hungry in high school. I was always hungry in school. I didn't have tutors. I had to walk. I didn't have a car. I didn't have a Sweet 16 car. I had to walk to high school. Like it was tough, And so how can you expect me to get 100 and 100, 100? There were days I missed assignments because I was bullied. There were days I was hungry. I One time I was in an exam and I was so hungry I almost passed out. Okay, so how do you expect me? I was naturally good at math and science. I was naturally very good at those things. But so I went from like on the honor roll, 99 average. But then when my mother went full on, like she got really bad in terms of abusing me. I went from about 99 average in like math and science to like 70, 75, 80, right? I got like, average marks. So I really, you know, even if I could afford university, I couldn't really get into it. But I wanted to take an extra year of high school, but my mother said no. My mother made me go to community college, like so in this stupid program that I even want to do. It was as if my mother was like living vicariously through me, like dictating my whole life. And she wouldn't let me date anyone. She wouldn't let me date men or women, my mother. So, and my mother had me fired from jobs. My mother harassed my work, my employers. My mother had me fired from jobs. My mother slandered me. My mother libeled me. I could not get jobs. I could not get jobs. My reputation, like my mother had destroyed my reputation. I could not get jobs. I could not get. My mother destroyed my reputation, especially my mother told everyone I was crazy. I had actually gone a few times actually in my when I was a teenager, and I had told people that my mother was touching me inappropriately. I told people, and they didn't believe it. We didn't have cameras back then. We didn't have cell phones with everyone had a camera on their cell phone. Now when I was a teenager, only rich people had phones, cell phones. Only rich people had cell phones when I was a teenager. And the cell phones when I was a teenager, they weren't like these nice Android phones where you could like do almost anything. They were like these older like phones that you were lucky if the phone even had a camera, you know what I mean? Like that's what it was like when I was a teenager. We didn't have like Android phones. We didn't like 20 years ago when approximately when I was a teenager, we didn't have these nice phones with all of these cameras everywhere. No. No, it was only rich people had like these cell phones 20 years ago. And the cell phones, you were lucky if they even had a camera. Like that was like the most advanced cell phone like 20 years ago. Like ones with cameras were advanced. You know what I mean? I have to go. I have to go.